So, I mean, if I do PLT, principles of learning, like I can't do like a moonwalk, but I could do like maybe one white glove. Oh, sorry, let's do the video. My name is Austin, and this video is gonna prepare you for the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching 7 through 12 test. That's number 5624. This video is gonna cover 3 things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the biggest concepts that you're gonna need to master, and after that, we're gonna look at a few practice questions. All right, so let's get ready for the PLT. No, we can't afford that song or any songs besides the background track. Okay, all right, copy that. The Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching exam consists of 5 content categories: students as learners, instructional process, assessment, professional development, leadership and community, and analysis of instructional scenarios. The questions for categories 1 through 4 are all selected response questions, and category 5 is a constructed response question, which we call a CRQ for short. Selected response, that just means multiple choice, and then constructed response is an essay question. The selected response questions are going to count for 75% of your overall score, and the CRQs are worth the last quarter. Now, let's make like a therapist and unpack these CRQs for a second. The topics that you'll write your essays about, they match the first 4 content categories. So the studying that you do for the selected response portion also helps you for the CRQs. You get to double that up. All right, that feels like a breakthrough. We'll circle back to this later. For now, let's dive into the multiple choice question categories. We'll take it from the top. Category 1 is worth 22.5% of your overall score. This is 21 selected response questions. We'll see questions about student development and learning, diverse learners, and motivation and the learning environment. So basically, it includes everything you need to know about you and your students. You also need to know how to reach all those teenagers in your classroom as an educator. Whew, that might seem daunting, but don't worry, we'll go through this piece by piece. Anyway, category 1. Let's start with student development and learning. In this section, you're gonna focus on anything that will help students learn better. An important part of teaching goes beyond teaching specific content knowledge and focuses on teaching students how to learn. Even though your students will have been in school for at least 7 years by now, as their brains continue to change and develop, they need continued support to learn how to use them best. Teachers should help students develop metacognition, which is the process of thinking about one's own thinking. Now, I'm thinking about my own thinking. Are Europeans right to use mayonnaise on fries? Will this video outlive me? Wait, did I just say that out loud? Okay, there are several different strategies that teachers can use to facilitate metacognition, such as activating prior knowledge, using graphic organizers, questioning, annotating. But the most important thing that I want you to take away from this about metacognition is that it helps students recognize how they learn best. While using the strategies, teachers should guide students through thinking about their own thinking. Are you feeling warmed up? Let's keep going through category 1. Next up is working with diverse learners. Students in your classroom will have a variety of diverse needs, so expect a lot of variety here. You'll see questions about English language learners, gifted students, and students receiving 504 or special education services. Want to hear the absolute need-to-knows for your exam about students receiving special education services? I have an idea for what to talk about, and it's IDEA. Get it? Okay, IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA has 6 main elements, and you can find them all in our study guide, but the most important essential one for the PLT is an IEP. Time for another acrostic here. IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. This is a plan created by a committee of general and special education teachers, parents, specialists, and administrators to provide a free and appropriate public education that is tailored to a student's needs and goals. IDEA mandates that all students receiving special education services should have an IEP, and that all teachers are required to follow them. All right, last part of category 1. Did you know that interior design would be part of your job as an educator? No, really, there are important considerations to make when designing the layout of your classroom. Let's take a peek inside our study guide to see some common arrangements and the instructional formats that they best support.
Teachers should be mindful that the student seating arrangement works in conjunction with the instructional activity. In other words, different setups lend themselves best to different tasks. When listening to any type of presentation, whether it be from the teacher, a guest speaker, or fellow classmates, Students should all be able to see. Facing front typically works best. When the whole class is having a discussion, it's helpful for everyone to be seen. When collaborating on a group assignment, it's beneficial for students to sit together. The walkways should be open so the teacher can easily move to check on each group. And when the teacher is working with a small group of students, the rest of the class should still be in view.
Okay, that was some great information, and if you'd like to see some more videos just like that as you prepare for your exam, subscribe to that 240 study guide. The money-back guarantee is gonna give you more confidence than a chubby guy in a Speedo. Before we move on to category 2, wanna hear one more tip for this one? Okay, there's gonna be a lot to consider when it comes to the physical space in a classroom, and safety is always gonna come first. Students should be able to move around the room and access needed materials safely and efficiently. So, if you see an answer choice that references making the room a safe space for students, that's usually the right one, so clue into that. Look, we made it through our first category, but we're just getting warmed up. Let's move on to the other big chunk of the selected response portion, category 2. Category 2 is also worth 22.5% of your overall score. Category 2 is all about instruction, as in the actual teaching that you'll be doing in the classroom. In this category, you'll need to know about planning, instruction, instructional strategies, and both questioning and communication techniques. It's a lot. Let's kick off this category by hearing a key concept on planning. Just like most parts of being a teacher, there are many factors to consider when planning instruction. And sometimes even the best laid plans go not according to plan. But you know what? It happens. You're a superstar teacher and we can handle it, both when we're in the classroom and on that exam that's coming up. Okay, ask yourself the following. Did most of the class greatly struggle? Teach it again and use a different approach. You may also ask yourself whether or not the expectations were clear. Did the students master everything except this one little part? Target it. Again, it's probably a good idea to rethink the approach you took in that first go-around. Did most of the class demonstrate mastery? All right, time to bump up the challenge. The most important takeaway here, if students don't grasp a concept, don't just present it in the exact same way a second time, switch it up. Okay, you've planned and adjusted your instruction. Now, how are you gonna deliver it? There are many strategies that you can use to deliver quality instruction. Let's discuss one that's bound to come up on your exam. We've established that planning is important, and it definitely is, but some of the most authentic teaching happens when the lesson goes a little off the rails. A teachable moment is an unexpected opportunity to teach something new. Teachers should capitalize on these. This is a big deal. A teachable moment may come in the form of a student question, like, say, a student who comes across a biology class after getting the flu and asks how a vaccine would work. It could also be in response to something else unexpected, like a typo in the heading of a news article that prompts a lesson on apostrophes. Teachable moments are powerful because they present authentic learning opportunities that are immediately meaningful and relevant to students. So, teachable moments are a great way to tune teens into your class. Tune teens? Tune teens, that sounds weird, right? I don't like that. Questioning is such an important strategy to use throughout instruction that it gets its own part in this category. Do you want to know a great framework to use throughout the instructional process and specifically questioning? Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is used to classify educational learning objectives into levels of complexity and specificity. The levels are modeled as a pyramid, starting with foundational skills at the base and increasing in rigor as they work their way up that particular skill or concept. When thinking about questioning, answering a question towards the bottom of the pyramid would require basic fact recall, such as, what are some resources provided in your community? Whereas higher level thinking is required as you move up the pyramid. Say a question like, how would you improve your community? That's gonna be found at the top. Want to have more practice identifying levels of Bloom's? We have it covered for you in the 240 study guide. And you want to hear some more good news? We've almost made it through category 2. Let's finish this thing out. You'll also see questions about effective communication in the category about instruction. And that makes sense because in the classroom, communication is key. And sometimes communication with this age group is going to be hard. But I have the perfect video highlighting some of the most important things you'll need to know about communication for this exam. Let's see an example of clear communication in action.
In the classroom, communication is key. Communication with students must be clear and specific. Remember, students don't know what they don't know. For the classroom to run smoothly, students must clearly understand expectations and directions. Teachers need to clearly communicate what they want students to do and how the students are supposed to make it happen.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, all right. It feels like we're getting a good mental workout in. Are you there with me? Okay, great. All right. Next category, here we come. Category 3 is all about assessment. This is worth 15% of your overall test score, and this is gonna equal 14-ish selected response questions. So yeah, part of your assessment is about assessment. I'm making a video about the video lessons in the 240 study guides to help people take a test about tests. All right, sorry. Where were we? Category 3, yes, okay. This category covers both evaluation strategies and assessment tools. Let's talk about evaluation strategies first. A big part of this portion is being able to match an objective to its assessment. I'll give you an example. Let's say you need to collect data to prove a student's growth over time. A portfolio is gonna be the way to go. This assessment aligns best with the objective because work samples can be collected over time to demonstrate that student's improvement. Let's stay on this assessment train and ride it on home. In the assessment tools portion, you'll need to know more assessment terminology. Expect to see vocabulary like percentile rank, stay 9, formative, summative, norm referenced, and criterion referenced on your exam. Let's dig into these two specifically. Criterion referenced assessments compare student performance to a predetermined standard, which is a criteria. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentage. Tests administered at the end of an instructional unit and state achievement tests are common examples. Norm-referenced assessments compare students to each other and rank them according to performance. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentile, grade level equivalency, or stay 9 using a normal-shaped bell curve. Common examples include the Scholastic Aptitude Test, SAT, or Intelligence Quotient Tests, IQ tests. So, to sum this up, criterion reference assessment looks at how students perform against a set criteria. Norm reference assessments look at how students compare against the normal curve. And those are some need-to-knows for Category 3. Want to see more? You know where to find it. One more time for the people in the back, baby. It's in the 240 study guide. We've made it to the last selected response category. Category 4 covers professional development, leadership, and community. It's a mouthful, and it's worth the same amount of your overall score as Category 3 at 15%. Here, you'll need to know about collaboration, both with other professionals and with students' families. You'll also see questions about improving your practice as a teacher, including specific vocabulary related to professional development. One of these terms to watch for is academic journal. You may love to peruse teaching blogs or chat with fellow educators in an online community, and that's great. That's not something we discourage. But on the exam, professional development should be backed by research, and that's why academic journals is such an important buzzword. We made it through the whole selected response portion. You deserve a little bit of confetti, let's go. Okay, now, who is ready to write a quick essay? Oh, come on, it'll be fun, I promise, I swear. The last category, analysis of instructional scenarios, is the one made up of constructed response questions, or CRQs. Now remember, this category makes up 25% of your overall score. I'm gonna explain what the questions will look like and give you some tips that you can use when you answer them. Plus, we'll look at a sample question and answer it together. You'll be given 2 case histories, or in-depth scenarios. Each scenario will be followed by 2 questions for you to answer. Furthermore, each question may have up to 2 parts. After you've read the first case history scenario, notice the grade level or ability level of the students. And be sure to note any particular context that you're given, such as a certain subject area, parent meeting, or a health concern. Keep that in mind. These responses should be brief and to the point. We recommend writing only 1 or 2 paragraphs for each question. Oh, and seriously, be as specific as possible. Now, let's get into those tips about what exactly we're gonna write. There are tons of possibilities for the kinds of questions that you're gonna get, or case histories that you're gonna write about. But remember at the beginning of the video when I told you about the topics in the CRQs and how they're gonna match those same first 4 selected response categories? I'm gonna give you a key tip for answering questions about each of those topics. Let's start with students as learners. One thing that you might be asked about is learning theories. So it's a good idea to review key terms like metacognition and the zone of proximal development. The best responses to questions about this topic are always going to be student-centered. Keep your mind focused on what's best for the students. Under instructional process, you might get a question about learning objectives. So we recommend you practice writing measurable objectives and review some strategies to directly achieve those objectives. If your CRQ is about assessment, it's highly likely that you'll be asked about the different types of assessments, or you'll have to choose which one should be used in the given scenario. Make sure to review formal and informal, summative and formative, criterion referenced and norm referenced assessments. Assessment is all about data. Top responses in this category point out the specific evidence given in the scenario to support their answer. Finally, something that's likely to come up under professional development, leadership, and community is teachers' reflective practice. Be prepared to write about reflective journals, assessment data, peer observation, and portfolios. Let's look at a sample question to pull all these tips into action. Here's the scenario. Okay, so we're talking about 8th grade, and we've got students with IEPs and students scoring below grade level. Now we get some detailed information. Here are the journal prompts the teacher's giving at the beginning of the unit about plate tectonics and topography. The next part of the case study shows us a slide from the lesson, as well as a transcript of a classroom discussion. Okay, you can pause to read this, but we recommend just skimming it and familiarizing yourself with it. Then, once you read the question, you can go back and look for the specifics that you need to focus on. Lastly, we get a transcript of a conversation between the teacher and one student in particular. Okay, here's the question that we need to answer. We need to choose 2 components of effective questioning that the teacher used, and we need to explain how those elements helped students learn. Go ahead and take a moment to think through what you might write. Now, there's likely more than one correct answer here, but I'm going to show you an example of one strong response. Since we're looking for what Ms. Glantz did during the questioning, we need to focus on the transcripts of conversations rather than the slide or the journal prompts. After looking over the class discussion again, you may notice that when student 1 answered incorrectly, Ms. Glantz had a great way of responding. Instead of shutting them down, she responded gently, recognizing their thought process, and smoothly transitioned back to finding the correct answer. That's effective questioning, baby. There's evidence of another component of effective questioning here: wait time. Notice the pauses and how she trails off mid-sentence to let students answer. That's a best practice, especially when working with students with exceptionalities. Okay, we've identified our 2 components of effective questioning. Let's write our response, and we'll make sure to explain why they're effective, so we get credit for both parts of the question. Here's the first part of the answer, about how she handled the wrong answer. It explains how the technique avoids making students feel bad, and it encourages their participation next time. And here's the second part, about wait time. It gets right to the point and explains how this contributes to student learning. So that's it. Now, on your exam, the case study would have a second question to answer too, but we don't have all that much time in this video. I gotta get out of here. The good news is that the 240 study guide has even more practice prompts and sample answers, so you'll have everything you need to get boned up. All right, now that we've practically written an entire essay, I feel like we're really good on constructed response questions, but let's look at selected response next. These practice questions will show you how concepts 1 through 4 are going to appear on your test. And if you want a ton more practice questions, click the link in the description for a free diagnostic test at 240. Okay, let's start back at the beginning. Students as learners. Here's an example from the development and learning section. Remember metacognition? Which one of the following examples would best help students to improve their skills of metacognition? A and B allow students to be creative and have ownership over their learning experience, which are both great ideas, but neither help with metacognition, so they're out of here. Creating lessons that relate to different learning styles is also a great practice in the classroom, but it doesn't require students to think about their own learning, so again, you're out of here, bub. Choice D is best. By asking students to think about which strategies would work best with the new assignment, you're asking students to understand how to organize material for their own consumption. While metacognition is important, there's so much more to this section, and luckily it's all in the 240 study guide. Just a reminder. Anyway, next up is diverse learners. Okay, here's a great example focusing on creating an IEP. Remember, even if you're not a special education teacher, you may spend time on an IEP team for your students. When deciding the least restrictive environment, or an LRE, for a student with disabilities, what should the IEP team consider? The best answer is this one. In order to create the least restrictive environment for a student, the frequency, location, duration, and intensity of the identified services that the student requires need to be considered. Okay, let's move on to category 2, the instructional process. How about a question on strategies? As Miss Harrigan is teaching about alternatives to fossil fuels, a student speaks up, complaining that alternative sources are not a good idea because they cost more. Which response would be best and lead the class through a learning experience related to this objection? Okay, this is a tough one. I can see most of these being used in the classroom, but one answer is definitely best here. By choosing choice A, incorporating the question into a future lesson, Miss Harrigan not only shows respect for the student who asked the question, but gives herself time to investigate the question and gives the class an opportunity to make a cost-benefit comparison of alternative fuels. She also takes advantage of a teachable moment. That's what makes A best. Okay, let's tackle one more from this competency. Do you remember talking about Bloom's taxonomy? This question provides a summary of a lesson, but let's take a look at the first real question here. Which of the activities from the lesson described above would be the most likely to elicit critical thinking from the students? Choice A and C are both about observing things. That's a pretty low level of Bloom, so not so much critical thinking there. In choice B, students are practicing, so they are working with material, but they're still not thinking critically. In choice D, students will be predicting. Now, we're at a higher level with critical thinking about cause and effect. 2 categories down, 2 more to go. Let's move on to assessment. Remember when we listed off all those types of assessments that we'll need to know for the exam? Let's see what we got here. Which of the following is an example of a formative assessment? Formative assessments measure learning as it's formed and can help you adjust your lessons to meet students where they're at. So choice A is the best choice. Using an exit ticket will give a teacher a quick look into how their students are progressing. Like I mentioned before, there are tons of assessment types. In order to learn all the types that you need for your test, make sure you subscribe to that 240 study guide. Last category, PD, leadership, and community. Let's see a question on collaborating with your teacher peers. Which of the following best promotes professional collaboration and mutual support? Okay, a lot of these look good, but we can knock A out right away. We'd love to see some peer tutoring, but that's collaboration between the kids. We need a choice that involves the adults. Now, the 3 remaining choices could all be considered collaboration, but the key here is mutual support. So while C and D are both great practices, they're probably required by the district. That's not what we're looking for. Choice B is best. Examples like the art teacher leading a unit that focuses on the same time period as the students are learning in history, now that shows professional collaboration and mutual support. And that's it, y'all. We've made it through the entire rundown in this video. Congratulations on finishing this video with me. I really hope that you found it helpful. Did you know that thousands of teachers have used 240 to get themselves in the classroom and pass their certification tests? Look, if you really want to make sure that you're prepared for the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching for 7 through 12, take that next step and subscribe to the 240 study guide. It has hours of videos so you can watch or listen as you please. It's test aligned, so you know precisely what you need to study. And it's got hundreds of practice questions, so you know that you're ready on test day. And don't forget about that money back guarantee, everybody. All right, click the link below to get started right now on your PLT, Pretty Learning thing. Yeah.